My name is Tamara Wallace, and I serve as the Associate Dean and Director of Field Experience at Radford University. This is my co-presenter, Dr. Kenna Colley. She is the Dean and Fearless Leader of our college. I'd also like to recognize some other members of our Radford team here with us today. Dr. Matthew Dunleavy, he's our Director of Assessment, and Dr. Amanda Bozak, she is the Director of our School of Teacher Education and Leadership, and also a part of our leadership team, and so we're glad that they're with us. Just some brief comments about Radford University in case some of you don't know where we're located. We are in Southwest Virginia, probably about an hour from the West Virginia border, near the Blue Ridge Mountains. We were founded in 1910 as a normal school, and we have a proud legacy of preparing teachers in the Commonwealth of Virginia and beyond. So today we're going to talk to you, the title of our presentation, Moving Beyond a Spontaneous Feedback Model to Allow for Truly Reflective Practice in Intern Supervision by Utilizing Video Performance Feedback. So today we're going to tell you our story of how we use technology to enhance how we coach our teacher candidates and, as a result, strengthened our supervision model. So why did we choose to use video to enhance our model? So we had a typical supervision model. So we have university faculty who supervise students in the field. Some are adjunct faculty, some are full-time faculty, and they're given a typical supervision load. Some context, we have 19 teacher education programs. All areas of special education are represented, as with the fine arts programs, middle, elementary, all areas of secondary, and foreign language. So, and we are also partnered with 10 different school divisions in Southwest Virginia who are in about an hour's radius of our campus. Currently this spring we have 190 students in field placements. We have 30 supervisors supervising them. And some have as many as 13 students on one supervision load. So imagine challenges, right? Seeing multiple students in multiple placements, because there's a challenge finding qualified cooperating teachers with all the retirements, right? Anybody seen the same issues? Yes, right? And so, and then, you know, supervising a set of students in the same content area, well, what happens? Well, in elementary education, English and mathematics are taught in the morning, so you have students teaching at the same time. So you've got a supervisor trying to meet multiple demands there. And so, that's one challenge we were dealing with. So trying to make that work. So video allowed us to make the supervisor available to multiple students. And being in Southwest Virginia, we get a lot of snow. Not this season, we haven't had too much snow, but in the past, you know, students would miss several days, even weeks out of placement. So then even less time to get those evaluations and valuable feedback in. So that was a huge challenge. Another problematic aspect of our traditional supervision model was that we taught our students how to reflect, right? But usually supervisor goes in, watches a lesson, directly after, we've got 20 minutes to talk about this lesson, and then we run on to the next student, right? Well, the student themselves don't get a chance to really think about what's happened. The supervisor is just kind of in their ear, this was good, this was great, think about this. They haven't had time to reflect, right? So giving students an opportunity to do that deep reflection and then engage in a conversation with the supervisor. And then obviously we get better by watching ourselves, right? And all the other professions, athletes, entertainers, they watch themselves and that's how they get better, okay? And then, of course, CAPE, right? We've got to show evidence that we are engaging our candidates in deep reflection as well as documenting evidence over time. So that's another reason why we made that move. So we partnered with Athena to take on this video performance feedback for our students to help them engage in deep reflection. So about 4 years ago, we started with one faculty member in our special education program, and she worked with a small group of students, and we liked the information she was bringing back to the group, the convenience, being able to serve multiple students, you know, getting that feedback into them, and so it allowed her to accomplish much more than in our traditional model. So later that fall, we all jumped in as a School of Teacher Ed and Leadership, and we all tried it. And here we are in our 4th year, and now all of our educator preparation programs, including our graduate programs in counselor education and educational leadership, are using AACTE. So those of you who aren't familiar, here is a screenshot of what it would look like if a candidate uploaded a video. So here is where the reviewer, the university supervisor, can make different kinds of comments. So right here, the orange or reddish flag, the supervisor could pose questions, green, make suggestions, blue, indicate areas of strengths, and then the yellow tab, they could just make notes. So in this situation, a reviewer made a suggestion for more wait time, and then over here posed a question, was this an expected student response? So after the reviewer puts the flags in and upload or click submit, those comments post here below the video. Very easy to use. And then the candidate can go back in and respond to the reviewer, so that's a nice feature as well.
Okay. Oh, I have to get the microphone. I wanted to talk a little bit about where Tammy and I came from. So we were both in the teacher education program at Radford University, and we were university supervisors for years and years doing this. So it's not like we're just administration looking down at university supervisors and saying this is a good idea. We had experienced it and were very seasoned university supervisors. But what does change is in our administrative roles, our perspective changes. And we come to things like AACTE and say, some of you may be feeling overwhelmed today of, we got to get better at this, we got to get better at this, every time we come here each year. So we really want to talk a little bit about the administrative perspective versus the faculty perspective. We do have dropping enrollments in teacher education. So we have to look at new and novel ways to recruit people into the field. We know technology, and especially something like video performance feedback, is going to be a very good tool to say, hey, look at this, look at our program. Plus, we enhance it with keeping that face-to-face model. We have several universities around us that are not doing the face-to-face model well, of going out into schools. We're still doing that well. We have that reputation of doing that well. So this is not in replacement of that. This is in addition to. And that's a very important piece. The changing landscape of teacher preparation. We also have to think about our traditional students that are coming in and what they're looking for. And they're very used to a lot of video in their world. And they're used to watching themselves, other people, and so we really have to think about this should be in teacher preparation. We really have to say, you hone your craft by watching yourself and getting better at what you do. And you have to you have to get used to critique, not by just us, but your own critique, your self-critique and your peers critiquing you. And that's a very important piece, I think, in teacher ed. The other thing is innovation. We see this as a small piece of innovation, but video performance feedback, Tammy and I were talking the other night. I started using this when I was teaching in the 80s. I'm come out of the field of special education, and we first had some research of letting kids with disabilities see themselves in routines, watching it with them, and they would be so surprised when they watched themselves, and how you could teach routines, whether it was a job routine or an academic routine. So we've been doing this a long time. Why did we take so long to get it into teacher education? It increases the opportunity for feedback. We know the more feedback our students get, the better they get. And so it increases the kind of opportunities. Also, the student impact. So what we want is we want impact on our students, but we also want our students to have impact on our pre-K through 12 learners. So we really want to say, what was the student doing at this time when you're video? Look at that. Look at their reactions, using it as an assessment piece, looking at engagement, looking at maybe a paired reading. There's so many ways that you can use it. And we really want to have an impact, that pre-K through 12 impact that we talk about in teacher ed. And then also with CAPE expectations, we work very hard at looking at what are the expectations in the field of teacher ed and our accrediting body. And we know we have to have more evidence, and that we're very aware of that evidence. We also want to look at our journey of shifting faculty mindsets. Now, I'm a person that build the airplane in the air. Not everyone loves that, but sometimes we can't wait. I mean, you have to jump in sometimes in teacher education and start things and then build it around you. And you all probably know what that feels like with a lot of external pressures. So in our journey, we got some folks that were really on board. We still have some folks that are really on board. And this was the easiest way we could put this. You know, we're all in. All teacher preparation programs are in. We've added recently counselor education. We've added educational leadership. And those are new this year. And we also would like to help expand places like someone who's not in our college, COSD, which is Communication Science Disorders. We see it as a great instrument for them, maybe even school psychology, things like that. But we're all in as far as everybody's use of it and requiring the use of it. The hard part is that, you know, we've got some in. Some faculty that are really in, you know, to the use. Some are all in, some are kind of in. And then some are brand new to it, and so they're building it. I was very lucky to get just one person's feedback from our graduate ed leadership program about how much she was liking it, and it was a candidate in the program. And that was great, and I'm like, okay, they're new to it. We have to hear from them and see how they like it. And then we still have obvious pushback. And that's going to happen in higher ed sometimes. Sometimes the pushback is I don't want to do anything new. You can't make me. And sometimes it's just it's one more thing to do, and you can't make me. So there, you know, this is where we are sometimes with any innovation. This is just an example of, we have co-placed cohorts. And so our co-placed cohorts are a special ed candidate and an elementary candidate together. And we've been doing that. We're in our 12th year of that. Very successful model and great circles of practice. And so this is an example of just how one of our special ed professors and elementary ed professors developed a really basic circle of practice. They're excellent at scaffolding our students through the use of video performance feedback. And so we didn't make copies for every one of you, but we're going to hand that around. So what they do is they get circles of 3s, and they have the students really get used to the idea of this by developing their circles of practice where students critique each other and get really comfortable with that first before our university supervisors do any kind of critique. And so they watch each other doing some real simple routines, this one being a read aloud. So you do a read aloud, and then they say, okay, what are the particular skills we want to focus on for positive feedback for each other? So that's what they start with to shape that behavior. Example, asking questions before, during, after the read aloud. What readings will you reference in feedback for each other? So obviously we want them to go back to the literature and the readings that they've been engaged in and say, what does it look like? What are you using from this? And then they have a very simple feedback plan. Here's your group members. Here's what collaborator number 1 and collaborator number 2 commented on. And then an action plan. Decide on steps you'll need to take in order to meet the deadline. You should at least decide the window for your second read aloud and the window for providing positive feedback. You will want to establish loops for communicating when videos are ready for each other's viewing pleasure. So they've brought the students, completely empowered them to give feedback to each other. They start with a positive feedback model, which that's what we want to do when we first take risks, and it's our very first placement in the schools. By doing a read aloud, they've structured it for them very nicely. Another thing we're passing around is they've sequenced it and even built in, this is how you use Edthena. And so what they've done in that first sequence in September when they do their very, very first video, they've really sequenced it well and provided kind of the how-to instructional list. So what has video done for our candidates? Is this you? I'm passing it off. I'm watching the time.
Okay. So first, it deepened or enhanced their reflection skills, right? Because they're able to watch themselves, they can identify best practice or link it to evidence. And then think about the implementation of that strategy. So if it was not implemented well, what kind of things do I need to think about? Do I need to think about the context of my students, what they learned before, you know? And instead of just saying, well, the strategy didn't work, throw it away, it was a bad strategy, right? So they can go back and study themselves. So video allows for that. It allows them to participate in collaborative communities of practice, so that professional learning community where they learn the benefits of engaging with other learners, right, and professionals in giving and receiving that feedback to improve their practice. It also facilitates better dialogue between the student and the university supervisor. When I supervised, I remember talking to a student about an area of growth, and the student would look at me and say, well, no, I think I did that just fine. I don't need to improve. Well, really? So now with video, and I wish I had video, I could say, well, let's look right here and look at Johnny back here. He didn't make that connection, so let's rethink that. And so they have to address the areas of concern. So it allows that evidence that they can't deny, right? So that better communication, and they're able to better receive it because it's right there. And better yet, they see it themselves, and we don't have to point it out. And students are also more proactive, so they don't need the supervisor to say, hey, upload a video. They're motivated to upload their own videos of themselves practicing a particular strategy, and then asking the supervisor, hey, give me some feedback, or practicing that strategy and realizing they hadn't thought about something, right? So that rehearsal that needs to happen before they execute a lesson with children. So it allows them to do that as well. And then we do have some cohorts that use the tool to help them practice as they prepare for interviews, right, for jobs. And so they use it there too, and are able to get feedback on how they answer or respond to questions.
So one of the things I wanted to bring up that you all probably noticed is we sat today and heard about the proclamations that were developed by AACTE of clinical practice. And this fits right into that. I mean, when I was watching that and listening to it, and a lot of things they talked about was improved collaboration and improved communication. And this tool and this video performance feedback really allows us to do that. We have to get our students talking about their practice, and they can do that by using this tool and really watching themselves with deep reflection and deep understanding of what theory to practice looks like. The other thing I was like, yay, the person who won the dissertation award today. The dissertation was all about video performance feedback and using video in teacher preparation and clinical practice. I was very happy to see that. So there's a new set of research that says this is a really good idea. And we know it's a good idea because we don't necessarily love watching ourselves on video. I probably won't watch the YouTube video, but I think one of the things is we have to do that to continually get better at what we do. So where would we like to go next? We have not yet involved cooperating professionals in this, meaning they are not yet watching the videos. The reason that we have not done this yet, and they can watch it for free, if they want, we haven't done the training for it. They're feeling a little overwhelmed in the schools, and so we will start a pilot of that soon. But it wasn't one of our first things that we wanted to do. So we know with our partners out there, we have to move slowly. You know, we're past the point, the superintendents are fine with us videotaping in the schools. We'd have no pushback on that. We have, what's great is we know that it's behind a secure system, so that's really helpful. The other thing is, we have electronic portfolios in many of our programs, so this works beautifully in that, but also now we're starting to share some of this with our prospective employers. So the students put it into their electronic portfolios, and we're really seeing that the school division folks who are hiring them love this. I mean, what better way for them to see them in action but to have a video and with the feedback right there. We always want deeper applications and discussion each year of how we're using this, what are we doing in our programs, how are we improving our clinical practice, and what are we going to be doing with video performance feedback at a deeper level every year. We had the educational leadership expansion, and what we're talking about now is having the ed leadership graduate students go in and watch, obviously, the cohorts of the pre-service teachers and then give the feedback. And so that's probably next year. We have very, very strong educational leadership faculty members, and but they do a lot. So we don't want to put too much on them. But that's our next step in the model. We want to push this down in our undergraduate classes, and next year we are trying to pilot an early field of getting our students out sophomore, junior years, which is also going to be a pilot. I mean, they're out there a little bit, but this is going to be more structured. And so we would really like to use this with some trial teaching of the students using some video in the earlier years. We haven't, decided how we're doing that yet. We still have to build it, but that's another progression. And then with CAPE analysis, we want to take those comments and those reflections and really pull them out both quantitatively and qualitatively and look at those as part of our self-study and really say, are we providing enough sophisticated feedback for our students? And are the students' comments growing over time of their own reflection? We have to study that reflection to say what kind of growth exists as they watch themselves more and more, and as they are able to reflect on what they're doing in their teaching practice. So that's the end of our section. We have another group that's joining us. It's about 2:06, and I think you're starting at 2:15, so we're going to let them come up. But if you have some questions for Dr. Wallace or I or our two colleagues, why don't we do those while we transition?
What type of video permission form did you use to make sure that parents and students would be allowed to be shown on the video?
Right. So what we did is we worked with superintendents, and we usually worked with who then communicated with their building principals. This is a closed system. We're not really sharing these publicly. And so they have used kind of the blanket permission forms that they have in their school districts, and we've gone with that. And then if we've had some that we had one middle school site that was a little nervous about it, and so we developed our own, and they gave it out. And we could do that, yeah. Right. And this is one of the things, we have monthly superintendent breakfasts, and one of the things we talked about with them is you should be much more alarmed or worried about what children and youth are videotaping on their phones than what we're doing. That's the dangerous stuff that's on YouTube in 2 seconds, and sometimes, there's a lot more videotaping in our classrooms than people know, and it's usually done by children and youth. So we're using it in a very closed site, in a very appropriate way, and so we try to make that case. But that's a great question. Yes, yeah. They should just take them a tour through YouTube one day and see what they're doing.